It's the weekly 30-30 trading list on the ASX. We are looking at the 30 strongest momentum companies over the last quarter, and then this week's 30 best launchpad stocks. The idea is that the companies build a base, consolidate, that's where they show up on the launchpad, and then they break out and run into the momentum leaders. The one guiding us through both the charts, the transition, and picking the eyes out of the best ones is Gary Glover from Novus Capital. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Chris. How you going?
Well, I'm excited to look at this list because the market has turned over. Like on your Tuesday reports, you've covered that pretty well and been on the right side of that for a good consecutive 9 months now with great picks. But there are still some companies that are just shooting the lights out and running rings and putting on good profits. So I'm keen to see what you found in this list of momentum leaders this week.
Yeah, so I looked. There's a bit happening in the lists and stuff there. So probably the momentum list. Actually, I was probably more impressed with that than say the launch pad. So number one there was the ASN, Anson Resources, which is kind of a small lithium play here. So obviously some of the, we had a lithium, stocks hit the list there a few weeks back, and they sort of stayed in there, but it's probably less in there currently. This is sort of one that has had a pretty decent sort of jump here. Some good volumes there, just probably a little small to me. You probably want to sort of, this one here having a good run here, you probably just want to watch this one for a little bit of take a breather or some sort of congestion there, but definitely has sort of popped up pretty hard there. The one thing which was sort of was pretty active on the list there was uranium stocks this week there, so it was definitely a big move. So Deep Yellow was sort of one of the big moves there. So I think last week we had, I think might have been LOT or something like that. There was a few lithium stocks sort of popped up last week that we sort of mentioned, sort of had sort of gapped up there. But yeah, definitely sort of gone on there. So bit hard to trade these ones. A little liquid. A lot of them are quite small here on the Aussie market, but definitely been a lot of activity in uranium there. So I think Paladin was also on the list. That's probably a little bit more structured in the trend. Bannerman a little smaller, popping up here, but again, pretty choppy there. A bit hard to trade. Not the easiest stocks to trade here. So I know a few people are looking at this sort of sector there, but yeah, just some of them are a little too hard to me. Silex is amazingly still on the list, Chris. So still managed to sort of keep going here. I think we sort of talked about this last week, how there was like that 4-day pullback there, no volume, then popped up there. And even like we had a couple of days down again, just no sellers coming in, even though we're sort of coming back in the range again, and popping up again on good volume. And again, look, it's still no sellers here again. So it's it's just not showing any weakness here yet. So quite amazing. So hard to sort of follow here now, but yeah, so far the down days are just no sellers coming in. So for those who are long there, there's nothing wrong there so far coming in. Whitehaven's still on the list. We're just talking only about Whitehaven. The only thing, look, obviously still got some momentum here. Got a bit of volume coming in here at this sort of high here. Now sort of gone, I think it got its paid its 40-cent dividend and was up 40 cents the next day. So just basically just kept powering here. The only thing for me is I had a look at these uranium. I had a look at these coal stocks here longer term and see how they're going to look how they trend. Up big sort of multi-year trends, and when they start to go down, they go down for multi-years as well. So going through a bit of a sweet spot here at the moment. Look, there's no reason to be selling coal here. Seems like everything's perfect there. But the one thing when I sort of drilled into this chart there, Chris, that worries me a little bit is that this is sort of, if I look at my sort of three, can't sort of show it here, but 3 ascending trend lines there. This is now on the 4th ascending trend line, and it's getting vertical. So basically this whole trend here is actually winding up. So it's not sort of, it's not built. This was sort of more of a constructive sort of build. This thing here is getting,
hyperbolic.
hyperbolic. I'm not sure what the right term is there, but yeah, just getting vertical. So I know McLaren would actually label this like a blow-off trend or an exhaustive sort of trend. So yeah, once these trends are up, they normally come back here. So they normally come back to where the last trend line started here, which is around that sort of 440 mark there. So hard to fathom a correction of that sort of size here, but yeah, look, maybe it keeps going here, might have a bit momentum still, but I'd just be, there's some risk here now just because of the structure of this trend's getting vertical. So, as we say, when no one wants to buy it, everything seems, everything's horrible, and there's no reason to buy it. That's usually the time to buy stocks, and when it's on the reverse side there, when everything's perfect, and just all the macro conditions are just, just a headwind there, and it seems like there's no reason to be selling stocks here. That's usually the time where you should be. So just keep that in mind here. Sort of the whole psychology of markets here is that when the going is so good, going is almost in perfect conditions there. That's often when sort of peaks come in. So
is that when traders sell into strength? Is that what they're talking about?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess you got to ask yourself here: can it get any better right now for coal stocks? And that's the question there. If it can get even better, then maybe there's more to go. But if it can't get any better, this is the sweetest of the sweetest spots. For coal here, this might be nearing a peak here. So look, it's a tough one now. I just don't like the fact that it's vertical sort of trends. I know how they finish. So there doesn't seem to be any sort of fundamental reason as to why you should be selling these stocks here, because the going is just perfect here. But that is often the right time to be selling them here. So yeah, but let's move on. Don't dwell on there. Just I'd say it's been an amazing run there for some of these coal stocks there. This is sort of one that I sort of caught my eye here, actually, the Magnis, MNS. So just because we sort of had this little pullback here, Chris, we had some good volume on that rise. Pullback here, some okay volume again on the second rise. Another pullback there. So we got a little VCP sort of happening in there.
This one that you picked up last week as well and said...
yeah, I saw this yesterday. I was almost going to trade this there. It's just not the most liquid sort of stock. So I came close to actually putting a position on here and just running a tight stop here. But I'm just a little nervous the market here. And I noticed this has got a history of sort of having these pops and not following through. So there's a little bit of that there. But structure of the trend looks pretty good. That's a little BCP pattern there, showing some okay volume as well. So yeah, I like the look of this. I just probably showed a little bit of constraint here. I just don't want to be. I'm a little negative the overall market, so I'm just trying to trade light here. But that looks pretty good in terms of our structure. I think TER again in that sort of coal space as well has had a nice sort of run there. One thing to consider here, Chris, is with sort of structure of trend. I just sort of brought this up as a bit of a lesson rather than anything else here. You can see how we had like a nice consolidation there. And this is a bit of an Elliot wave there. Usually, if you're going through a bit of a strong run there, you're looking for like a 5-wave structure. So if anyone has sort of studied Elliot waves, the basis is there that you sort of go up in 5 and then correct in 3. But like you can see a little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-wave structure in there, and then it cooled off. And so if you look from here, we've got a little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th wave higher than that. And this is a perfect Elliot wave because this is sort of like, this is what they call a simple, like a simple sort of structure. So Elliot wave says one correction is simple, the other is more complex or flat, so there is a 5-wave structure in here. So this is sort of, we've just sort of seen some history. And once you get a 5-wave structure, they can pull back here. So just, if anyone who hasn't looked at Elliot wave before, look, I don't lock yourself into any theory, but I just definitely the 5-wave theory is pretty interesting for Elliot wave, and it is useful for traders there. If we've sort of got a pretty clean 5-wave Elliot wave structure, then that's definitely when we should be tightening up our stops here. So yeah, just interesting here with definitely some history in that stock of doing that. This one here, this Neuren Pharmaceut, we talked about this actually a couple of weeks ago. how we sort of tightened up in here, a little VCP pattern here, Chris, and then it sort of started to break up here. And then sort of, it's been a bit messy. It popped up and come down again, but so far not showing, this is pretty bullish here, just breaking out of that, I think actually sort of closing above this the other day, it looked pretty positive. So I actually had this on the list there before today, but that's pretty good sort of sector too, obviously, sort of, this sort of biotech sort of healthcare has definitely been pretty robust. This is a pretty tight congestion here, nice VCP breaking up here. This is like like Davis would be, if you've ever read the Davis box theory here, would be, this is pretty positive there, because that's probably the highest close there that day there. So it basically hasn't closed. That's, that's probably closed the highest point the whole time there. So that would have been a bit of a trigger there yesterday to be getting long NEU. I know it's a bit of a shady market here, but again, the leading stocks lead here. So that's thought that looked pretty interesting. Excuse me. Again, the coal stocks on the list there. So BCP still holding on there. Some good volume on the way up here. Just starting to see a bit of volume here now off that high there. So want to see, we're seeing some of the stocks that continue to run as they pull back and no volume. So there's a bit more, there's a little bit of volume in there. So that's a little bit of a negative. So if we start to see some sort of selling in there, LTR is the other one there, sort of not too different to the NEU we just sort of showed there. Pretty impulsive, sort of strong wave up here. And now we're going through a bit of a tight sort of structure here. So we sort of got this little pennant or flag here. So if you remember NEU, basically sort of like it's like an A, B, C congestion, and then it popped here. So this is definitely, LTR is definitely one to put on our watch list.
So could that be a high and tight flag with that quick rally and then tight consolidation at the top of the range?
Yeah, that's right. So, whether you call it a high tight flag or pennant or, they're all sort of very similar here. Just when you see that sort of tight congestion, I mean, this is impulsive. Basically it's, there's really aggressive trend, and there's basically this spacing between the last sort of highs and lows in there. It's just where you can see it's pulled back, rallied, pull back again. So this is what we call a corrective trend, where your sort of highs and lows overlap each other. This is more of a sideways sort of market here. So I say the market's only trending, part of the time. It's often going for a breather or having a bit of a pause. And this is what, as traders there, we want to sort of look for those pauses, those consolidations, and then hopefully after a while they break out again, and then we go with it. So those are the safest places to trade there, because then you can sort of, you've got your stop sort of somewhere safe. Whereas, if you're buying, you're trying to buy this trend in here, I know it might go high there, but where do you place your stop? Your sort of your risk reward sometimes is hard to sort of judge there. So that's why the best traders look at, do look at these congestions, these sort of coils there, just because they get a good risk reward and good sort of break even stuff there. AKE is sort of one that's had a nice run here. I sort of written here a bit of a question mark on this one because of the big volume at the high here. See how it's gone up to retest the high there, Chris? And
right at the previous highs, yeah.
Yeah, so volume's there. So oftentimes if we see a nice strong move and we go up near the high, we want to see that volume actually reduce. So you actually want to see like a consolidation under the high, but then no selling coming in. Whereas if you're actually seeing a consolidation under the high and the big volumes coming in, then that's a bit of a concern. That could be distribution type volume. So that's just an observation there. I just thought I'd show on the list there for viewers there. That's probably one that I'd be a bit suspicious of, just because of that price activity. So we want to sort of see that, I'm not sure if that NEU, we can sort of see that. Yeah, a bit hard to see it in there, but
if you zoom in, maybe from January.
Yeah, but we can still see in there, there's just there wasn't any volume. See how it just dried up in here? So just no selling coming in here. So no signs of distribution at all. Very, very, very light here. So that's what we want to see. We want to see the stocks coil up, go through a little bit of a pullback and a tightening phase there, and no volume come in. If we see volume come in, that's where that's a bit of a negative there. A couple of stocks actually surprised me on the list there. I must admit, A2 Milk, and again, I think we talked about this one, had a little bit of a VCP, didn't really give you much of a trigger there because it really gapped through on big volume there. But I say this was on a bit of an earnings upgrade or improvement there. And obviously, as we know, when we get a fundamental improvement, we usually get some follow through here. So interesting there was obviously big volume, which is very positive. Next day, big volume, had a bit of a down day. Volume was bigger than normal, but not bigger than the previous two up days. And then within one day, bang, we've got a reversal pretty strong. So I saw this yesterday and thought, wow, that's pretty strong. That's still looking pretty robust there. So yeah, still looks pretty positive, A2 Milk there. So
that's saying what, that buyers are happy at the 550, 560 area. They are happy to be buying, and they'll buy in volume there.
They're still participating. So that little pullback there, a little cool off, all it did was brought more buyers straight back in there to buy it up here. So yeah, so just the price action is still pretty positive. So yeah, just showing a bit of strength there, compared to a market which is a little bit weak at the moment. So Nitro is sort of one that I've Nitro in one of my lists there just because it's sort of had a pretty strong sort of revenue numbers and stuff there for the last couple of years. So one company that was flying basically sort of a year ago obviously had a big decline here with the growth crunch there, but so it's had a bit of an upgrade here, obviously some good numbers out, so it's a bit positive there. So you wouldn't trade it here, Chris, so it's a bit hard to sort of follow this on a gap here, but this is definitely one to keep an eye. Yeah, you might sort of get some congestion there, you might come back and fill some of this gap here. It's definitely one to sort of put on the list there, just when you're sort of seeing growth, some growth sort of stocks there with some good numbers and stuff there. Just not heaps of those in Australia, those sort of, companies there. So yeah, just thought, okay, this was on my sort of list there a couple of years ago because it's performing pretty well. I'm tempted to put it back on my list and just keep an eye on it. And maybe we'll get a congestion here over the next month or so. But that was sort of mainly it from the momentum list there. Looking at the launch pad, so just basically some of the movers for the week there. This one I sort of this one I didn't like. Because we've sort of had this little light volume rally here, which would be a bit of a relief rally, and then bang, we've sort of had that big day in reversal. That was probably the most volume there. Was the bearish there. So we just had this light rally here, and then hit a swell of selling here. That's just not what we want to see. Okay,
so you have a massive range day on that big green candle, and that's a decent size amount of volume, but it's surpassed by the selling day. It's probably a bit smaller in the total range, is it?
Yeah, so this is sort of volumes are okay in here, that been great, and that's sort of showing a bit of improvement there. I thought, okay, maybe we've got something going on here. Has a bit of a pop, and you think, hold on, maybe this can get going, but then bang, basis some selling, a wall of selling just comes in, hits that stock there. So that's not really what you want to sort of see there. You don't want to see a wall of selling coming in. So that's often what happens here with some of these sort of stocks that have already had a good run, and then they peel back, and then they have these little sharp rallies sometimes, like a bit of a bear market rally, you might refer to, but you do see it a lot in these sort of smaller stocks as well. So so interesting that it sort of popped obviously on the list, but not so good when you sort of see that seller sellings come in. I think CBA was, sort of similar, pretty light volume rally, so I can't get excited by that. I think Paragon was on the list, but then this thing here is more of a dull rally, so it's struggling to get going here, so that's not so good either. Apart from the Nitro was on the list, so I just got to put that on my watch list. Rhythm Bio sort of one's pretty interesting here, so this is potentially a big VCP pattern there. Just sort of gone up in a little three waves here, no volume here so far, so mightn't be ready here. Maybe on a weekly there, we might get our little, might just sort of come back in the range again and then go there. This is definitely interesting sort of biotech company. They had some pretty good wins there. Kind of exciting company, I think, potentially. So yeah, hopefully it'll maybe congest back in here and start to turn up here. But this is definitely one to put on the list there.
How's that volume behaving? If it is creating a VCP, is that the right kind of volume behavior that you're seeing from it?
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. They were just seeing a bit of selling, sort of through here. So obviously some good volume initially on the drives. Okay volume here and an okay volume here. So, but then you want to see it dry up here. So this has sort of dried up here, the volume. They sort of can't get going here, but it just maybe we might just come back a little deeper here first, and then, but big structure here on the, so we want to sort of see it, almost be perfect if it came down to 110, and then you started to see some big volume come in here over the next month or two, and then it starts to turn up again, and then maybe that's one to sort of follow. But sometimes you can see these structures there, and you hope, you can sort of think, oh, this would be perfect if it came down to here somewhere, build a high low, we saw some volume coming, because it has sort of dried up in here. So it's weird. I mean, sometimes you're watching structures build for 6 to 9 months, waiting for them to develop. So don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but that's definitely one that I'd put on my list there, just because it's, I think, we've seen here some biotechs have some pretty decent moves here recently. I still think that healthcare biotech will be pretty strong moving forward here. So Webjet had a bit of an upgrade the other day, just sort of talking about numbers, pretty positive, but not super value in this one here. I think, this is sort of, I do like this sort of segment here, travel, but yeah, you probably just got to, get away for a bit of a consolidation there. But I think that sector looks pretty positive. Just going to be a bit of a slow build here. Big is interesting there. Had a decent move there. The one thing I did see that was basically that was pretty exhaustive there. Sometimes you get big volumes like this can actually see these days can mark lows. Just it's like just a panic or so when you see this super big volume there, they can be kind of exhaustive of the exhaustive sort of down move. So it's just sort of something to watch. It's hard to buy those there. I was reading a sort of theory there that if you are going to sort of buy, retest of the trend, or even if you're sort of trending up and you come back to trend lines there, you don't want to be sort of buying it just when it hits what you think you might be your support line. You really want to sort of see like a jump up where maybe the stock's up, say 3% on strong volume there. So you'd probably want to see that type, you're wanting to sort of see that day where it's up maybe 3%, and there's big volume there before you sort of jump into any sort of move like that. So but yeah, it's did a bit of building here, a couple of high lows and stuff, and it still looks okay here to me. But yeah, just thought it was an interesting theory here, rather than because people, I personally wouldn't be sort of trying to catch lows. It's pretty hard. Basically it's fraught with heaps of danger. But if you were gonna, if you were gonna be a little dangerous, you want to be at least waiting for a trigger day first. Is what I'm probably trying to say there. But not for the inexperienced. That's all I'll say there. Bannerman was on the list. I think there was a few on the list there. B and R was on our list there. Again, just maybe a little bit tight, a little bit small here, but all tightening up here. GGE is okay there. It's not the worst looking chart. Some okay volumes in there. The problem with that is it's 2.5, 3 cents is pretty hard to trade. And the last one there was 40 Medical, which is sort of interesting there. There's actually actually quite a decent block of volume going on down here near the lows. So see that had a bit of a pop here, Chris, some decent volume in there, then pull back on no volume. Some big volume sort of come in again, and then we've sort of squeezed back here, and then at the lows here we've sort of seen a couple of decent blocks of volume again. So
all that volume's erratic, is that constructive to see?
Yeah, so it looks it's a little VCP oriented. We'll sort of probably see these pullbacks are probably similar in size here. So you probably want to see this tighten up a bit more, but stock's a little loose in its movement, so a little risky. But you probably want to sort of see this tighten up here. But I say this, interesting there, just because we've seen some pretty big lines go through the stock here. Look, so far it's a pretty mean downtrend, so you got to take that into consideration. That's a bit of a concern. I'd like to probably see this sort of tighten up here, congest a bit, and then start to sort of work at some more normal volume. So I just one that I sort of put on my list there, just because of those volumes are pretty big. I mean, that was pretty chunky trading going on there for a stock that's sort of been not too much there. Even there's some decent lines going through here as well. So
if you were to see the right chart formation, but the volume stayed erratic, like it has been for the last few months, would that be enough to keep you out of the trade, or you'd kind of maybe trade with caution?
Yeah, trade with caution. So if I was interested in there, I might just, oftentimes I'll just sort of start small with a position. And if it starts to sort of build, I might build my position up there. But it's it's a hard one there. It's sort of like at the moment I'm like the market is, to me that's kind of obvious we're going to trade down for the next sort of 4 to 6 weeks. The market just looks pretty bearish here. The macro is pretty negative, and even commodities are sort of starting to sort of break down here as well, which is not good either. So so you're just going to be, it's a pretty, we're under the 50-day moving average as well. So all the sort of macro signs as to, are telling me to go really light here. So I'm trying to be in at least 50% cash here. So I'm really trying to hold myself back here, not trade. If I'm trading really small. I say sometimes when the market's not in the right conditions and very difficult, then it's almost more important to not lose any money in that period there. So yes, that's a pretty tricky environment at the moment. So, but what I think is more important is actually looking at the list here, which stocks are holding up the best, which ones are sort of congesting. Because, as we sort of showed the last time we sort of came down into that sort of June low, we were looking at which stocks at that stage were looking pretty robust there. And I think, from the list that we sort of developed there, I'd say probably 90% of that list that that I went through and we looked at, that looked at probably the strongest there. Not most of them performed the strongest. Maybe 10% of that list, had an okay move, whereas 90% of that list had a really strong move. So all the strongest looking stocks definitely sort of kicked on there. So that was definitely a pretty good guide there. So we're probably looking for the same thing here. If we are going to pull back into October here, then we want to sort of see which stocks are going to be holding up the firmest here over the next sort of 5 weeks here. So it's actually, this is probably more important to get the stocks right here for the next low. So yeah, got to basically, I've been redoing all my lists, going through my lists and kicking out the old stocks, kicking out the ones that are underperforming. Just trying to set myself up here for the next sort of up, big uptick there, because it's just this period of the market where it's hard to make money, and there's periods of the market where it's all on. So you really, what's the there's probably there's probably different ways of saying this, but it's probably probably more eloquent put, but I have a little term on my board here which says shit like a bird and eat like an elephant. And that's kind of the essence of trading, is we're sort of when we win, we have to win big, and then if losing is part of the game. It's okay to lose, you just got to lose small. So it's just really important to sort of get that principle locked in. So when we're on the winning side, it's just so important to be running with the market and to be getting the big moves into making big dollars. Because as we know, the market doesn't always trend here. So that's the key.
Well, it's a good point. You'd circle back to the June lows when you were running through the list. I remember at the time you were saying, look, it's hard to find something to trade. We're looking at these lists. You were seeing higher lows and relative performances, but you weren't seeing a great amount of companies to trade, but you were building out the list of things to watch. And is that kind of the importance of doing the homework before the market turns, so that when the market does turn, it happens fast and quickly. You already know your favorite stocks that you want to be trading and which setups you're looking for. Is that kind of the homework part of it?
Yeah, that's right. So in the past, when I've seen markets sort of turn down and sort of fall into the right sort of sell windows, I've just gone and bought my usual safe sort of stocks and then got a safe return on the bounce. Whereas recently, what I've been trying to do is look at the stocks that are actually performing the best, that are actually looking the strongest, and swinging with those. And since I've been doing that, my returns have more than doubled just by trading the strongest stocks, by looking at the stocks that have shown they're the ones that move the biggest. That's, I mean, you read it and hear it, but when you see your P&L move double what it normally does, when you start trading that principle, it's quite compelling. So I've definitely found that over the last sort of 12 to 18 months the case, and I've had to change my view on trading the last couple of years to be a little bit more it's funny, you read these things over years about trading the strongest and looking at but oftentimes you go back to what in the market there. You might trade them, buy Macquarie or CBA, or just buy what but I think one thing I'm learning here is that the charts are basically showing us which stocks the market likes the most, and they show them early. And we shouldn't be trying to buy the deepest V-shaped lows. We should be trying to buy the ones that are holding up the best and strongest. So since I've been doing that, it's made a massive difference to my returns. So that's my experience. I'm not telling anyone that's what you should do. Go and do your own homework. But all the great traders say the same thing. And from my experience in changing my approach the last sort of 18 months, it's definitely had a significant impact on my returns. In not in a small manner, but in a large manner. So I can only speak from my experience.
Well, that's a good insight indeed. Changing your market stance has doubled your P&L for similar sort of market events. So if that's not enough incentive and inspiration for somebody to go back and reassess and think through what you've just talked about, I don't know what is from a trading, but that's probably a good thing to go back and review. So we'll keep on top of that as you're talking about the market leaders, the relative performers as the market's coming down. So that's a good point. Thank you very much, Gary Glover from Novus Capital.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think the next sort of 4 to 5 weeks here, the launch pad, the quality momentum is going to be super important. So this is the next 4 to 6 weeks is going to be imperative. We're going to basically see who the strongest are in the next month here, I think. So looking forward to it.
Very, very nice. Well, if you want to learn more about how Gary runs his portfolio on his Tuesday videos, you can click on the link to the right-hand side for that playlist. And he did mention the high and tight flag or the pennant, which there's a tutorial on that in greater detail. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll come back again next week.
Thanks, Chris.